Welcome to the Toronto Reportback of the World Social Forum Free Palestine, which was held in Porto Alegre, Brazil last month from November the 28th to December the 2nd. My name is Deborah Cook and I'll be chairing the event tonight. Thanks for everybody for joining us, and thanks also very much to Robert and everybody else here at Big Satun for hosting this event. It's always a pleasure. Thanks also to Kaya for co-sponsoring this event with Faculty for Palestine, and to all of the groups who have endorsed this event: Students Against Israeli Apartheid at York and U of T, Queers Against Israeli Apartheid, Labor for Palestine, and the International Anti-Zionist Jewish Network. The first panel, we're going to provide you with a bit of background and an overview of the World Social Forum, beginning with some really amazing video footage. Speakers in the first panel will be John Grayson, who's a filmmaker. He teaches at York and is currently working on an opera documentary about pinkwashing and queer BDS.
Porto Alegre in 2012 hereby decides to 1. Identify pinkwashing as one of the main strategies used by the Israeli state and its supporters to divert attention away from the oppression of the Palestinian people. 2. Oppose the use of pinkwashing by Israel. 3. Actively support the work of organizations resisting pinkwashing as an essential part of the movement. 4.
Now we're going to hear from Monira Kitmitto, who is on the coordinating committee of the Coalition Against Israeli Apartheid and was a Palestinian delegate at the World Social Forum. Thank you.
Last month, people from around the world gathered in Porto Alegre in Brazil to show ultimate solidarity with the Palestinians in their struggle against Israeli apartheid. This event took place after the Israeli military operation, Pillar of Cloud, pounded Gaza with no mercy, where the leaders and governments of the neoliberal world did not do anything to end the suffering of the Palestinians and to hold Israel accountable for the crimes it's committing. The failure of a state-led or state-centered peace initiatives has changed the way how people think about their freedom initiatives. They start collectively to mobilize their efforts in the right direction and took the peace initiatives in their hands to increase the pressure on Israel and its allies. It is the new approach, the people-centered approach. And here I will quote from the website of the World Social Forum. They said, exactly 60 years after Brazil presided over the UN General Assembly session that agreed upon the partition of Palestine, Brazil today will host a different type of global forum. This solidarity movement emerged from the people, from the grassroots, as more than 3,000 activists from 36 countries came together to help build worldwide support for the Palestinian struggle. This forum shows that the best way to help to end the Palestinian suffering is when people come together to find the means and tools to pressure Israel to end the occupation and bring justice to the Palestinians. The World Social Forum, Free Palestine, is a global, popular movement which provided, and also I quote from the website of the forum, space for discussion, exchange of ideas, strategizing and planning in order to improve the structure of solidarity. It is, end of the quote. It is a reflection of international social movements' desire to pave the road for joint struggle for justice for the people of Palestine and liberation of their land. On the other hand, it is a global tool to strengthen the solidarity ties to intersect with the Palestinian global struggle against Zionism for an end to the occupation, for the Palestinian right of return in complicity with the international laws and for equality for all. A member of the mobilizing committee of the World Social Forum stated that, quotation, "The World Social Forum will be an opportunity to solidify the movement of solidarity with Palestinians and to promote internal learning, build consensus around the Palestinian civil society call for BDS movement against Israel, establish cross-struggle alliances, particularly with the Global South, and launch campaigns, initiatives to hold Israel accountable. Close the quote. Through World Social Forum, Free Palestine, the Palestinians and the BDS movement has intensified the common grounds with other global social groups, other unions, religious groups, artists, NGOs, etc., against all forms of colonization, racism, hegemony, inequality, and injustice. Over 150 workshops were to explore and coordinate efforts, create networks between all solidarity movements around the world, and found an effective plans that can empower the Palestinian struggle on the ground, such as the boycott, divestment, and sanction on all levels, including all sectors of societies, students, artists, workers, media, immigrants, and many more. The World Social Forum Free Palestine made it very clear that the joint struggle and the joint solidarity among all diverse groups and organizations will be of great importance to unite the peoples and emphasize the fact that the system that denies the Palestinian rights is the same one who practiced the policies of injustice, inequality, and who abuse the people's natural resources and applying state repression which worsen the human lives of people all over the world. On November 29, a collective demonstration marched through the streets of Porto Alegre in coordination with the Brazilian unions to recognize the United Nations designated International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. And it happened to be on the same day when the UN recognized Palestine as an observer state in the General Assembly. There were some great organizations that shared their great experience fighting against the apartheid, such as the South African delegates, who actually enriched the discussions and gave very helpful information about the apartheid system, its impact, and raised awareness about the best venues to fight it. Alongside all the successes the World Social Forum Free Palestine achieved, it is very important to say that there were many attempts by the Brazilian government in coordination with the Palestinian Authority to minimize the discussion about the right of return and thus to limit the discussion about the UN statehood bid. It was disappointing the way many panels and workshops were facilitated, many difficulties hinder the ability to achieve better solidarity grounds among us. The forum also did not receive enough media coverage as Zionists attempt to prevent the World Social Forum from happening in the first place by pressuring the Brazilian government, the mayor of Porto Alegre, and the municipality of Porto Alegre not to make this event happening. And when they failed to do that, they put lots of pressure to cut the funding for this event. And at the end, they minimized the funding, which led to minimize the services and the facilities. At the same time, the alternative media did not stretch its own resources to cover the event more thoroughly. I have to say at the end, and from my own personal opinion, that the Canadian BDS groups conducted themselves in a very productive way. And later, thankfully for them, we will hear from each group about their involvement and their achievement. I hope that this panel today will help covering the remarkable event and comes out with constructive ideas for any coming global event. Long live solidarity, long live Palestine.
Now we're going to hear from Yafa Jarrar, an activist with Students Against Israeli Apartheid at Carleton and a Palestinian delegate at the World Social Forum.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks for inviting me. And it's a pleasure. It was a pleasure to be a delegate at the World Social Forum in Brazil. An amazing experience, but also a very important experience for me, a learning experience. It opened my eyes as a Palestinian and as a Palestinian activist in Canada to many issues of solidarity and even internal issues that we face as Palestinians, considering that there were many Palestinian organizations and civil society organizations present there, and many of the people that I myself organized with back in Palestine for a while. So I have to be brief because there's so many of us, but I'm gonna try to quickly talk about, well, Monira covered the background of the World Social Forum, but I'm gonna quickly talk about the relevance of the World Social Forum to the Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions movement, and some of the main issues that, in my opinion, and maybe what we gathered as delegates who spoke on the academic boycott in specific and issues with academia and students and campuses have highlighted, and later on we'll hear more in detail from MJ about this. So the World Social Forum actually took place marking the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. After decades of having Palestinians and Palestinian groups and organizations present at the actual World Social Forum, it was decided that it's time for peoples from different backgrounds and different struggles, including people who are part of struggles regarding issues of refugees, issues of people of color, migrant rights, labor rights, queer issues, anti-Zionist organizations, indigenous groups came together and decided to actually have a World Social Forum on Free Palestine. And it was a perfect timing because it was one week after the assault on Gaza. So they decided, and we came together in an international gathering to highlight the role of the Global South in specific. And actually, we have to think about it also within a geopolitical context, the fact that it took place in Brazil, and maybe others will highlight and talk about that a little bit in detail, or maybe in discussion. So they came together in solidarity with the Palestinians and the National Liberation Movement at large. And this, again, as I said before, came 1 week after the Israeli assault on Gaza. So the way the World Social Forum was kind of organized, it was basically composed of people from all walks of life who do Palestine solidarity work, but within their capacities. So there was a lot of diversity. Even though everybody was doing Palestine solidarity work, there was a lot of diversity. There was around 125 workshops throughout the World Social Forum, and the topics varied from Palestine solidarity activists to labor and Palestine to BDS campaigns, including cultural, academic, even sports boycott that came from the delegation from France, which was something also very interesting because we don't talk about it much, we don't hear about it. There isn't a specific call for sports boycott, so maybe that will be the next step from the World Social Forum. Political prisoners, especially marking the long hunger strike that still goes on until today. And there were very many interesting workshops on political prisoners, and kind of the struggles and joint struggles came together in one workshops from different strikes in Georgia and California that also followed and kind of were paralleled with the Palestinian prisoners' hunger strike. Palestinian women organizing, solidarity with Palestinian fishers and farmers, queer and anti-pinkwashing movement, refugee right of return, Palestinian diaspora, and challenges of people in the Palestinian diaspora. The one thing that I would like to focus on in terms of making the connection between, or the relevance of the World Social Forum and the BDS movement, and something that I think this is what I gathered from the networking and the workshops that I've attended, was issues of accountability and complicity. And I think this was one of the important parts that came out of the World Social Forum. What you're going to hear today is different experiences, because even though we were all in Brazil, we had different experiences depending on the network we were with and the people that we met with. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. So international accountability, legally, politically, and actually in Israeli apartheid. And so that's something very important and very much related to the Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions movement. It's an international call to do local campaigns and local pressure on governments to impose sanctions and boycotts on Israel. And the extent and the details of these different accountabilities and responsibilities were very much highlighted in Brazil. Issues of legal struggles and national and international courts and their roles in sustaining and maintaining and even punishing Israeli apartheid. Political challenges. So I'll come back to this part, but this is very much related to also the political challenges that came along with the World Social Forum, like Monira spoke about. And that includes the Israeli lobby, the Israeli embassy in Brazil, but also I want to mention the Palestinian Authority. The PA also played some kind of a role in the political challenges, in my opinion, in the World Social Forum. And the Palestinian embassy itself played that role. Of course, we can't equate the roles of the Palestinian and the Israeli embassy at one, but we did also face, as Palestinians, some challenges, and as Palestinian activists, from representatives from the Palestinian Authority and the work that they have been doing behind the scenes in order to basically make it easier to put pressure on the World Social Forum. And some of the pressures that have been played behind the scenes by the Israeli embassy and the Zionist lobby was pressuring, for example, to drop the Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions workshops and the right of return workshops in specific. And even the talk about them, drop them out completely. Of course, that didn't happen because we went there. But some other pressures that actually succeeded was cancellation of some speakers and denouncing certain invitations to certain people, including Leila Khaled, who, not that she wasn't invited, but her invitation was something like, "We don't want you to come." It was sent the night before and through Air France, and she specifically said she can't fly through Paris. Anyways. So the important thing for I think the BDS movement was really pinpointing and having strategic meetings and networking. on how we actually are going to build a joint struggle in communities for liberation, connecting struggles, and that's a very important part. That's a very important part that we were kind of dropping the ball on as an international solidarity movement, connecting the struggles, especially when it comes to issues of political prisoners, when it comes with issues of self-determination, and indigenous struggles as well. So again, as I said before, the prisoners' workshops were very interesting in that aspect, because not only did they touch on the perils of the prisoner struggles, but also they talked about the complicities in terms of companies and corporations such as G4S being the second largest private employer, and how it operates in privatization of prisons and the campaigns against it that the Palestinian prisoners themselves called for it from inside prisons. But also the talk about US Canada connections and complicity, and how the surveillance systems and security systems that are being maintained in Israel are also very much connected to the surveillance and security systems in Canada and the US. And in many ways, the police forces in Canada and the US are being trained in Israel to do the very suppressions that they do here today, and maybe that we see against even indigenous groups in Canada, and these are things that we don't know about. So one of the things that were emphasized, and I think are very important, is linking the struggles and is learning from our experiences how we actually can strategize. Linking, for example, things like Black liberation, Latino movements, refugee and migrant rights movements, labor struggles, anti-Zionism, and indigenous self-determination issues in a very meaningful way, in meaningful campaigns that will actually affect the BDS movement. So I'm gonna wrap up here. I do have many points written in front of me that I don't have time to get into, but I would be more than happy to talk about them during Q&A. But all in all, I'm very grateful and thankful that I went to this experience. And hopefully we will have more time to share what we have gone through, and get everybody here, if they would like, to be also networked with the people that we networked with, and the groups as well as the organizations. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Aziz Choudry, sorry, I have a cold, and Jill Hanley, along with Mostafa Henaway, who were editors of this book, Organize, okay? They were not at the forum, but their important book, Organize, a new anthology, addresses an underlying theme of the World Social Forum, which is building global justice movements. And it includes 2 chapters on Palestine and BDS.
Really pleased to be able to speak to you tonight and be involved in this event. We want to talk to you a little bit about what led to us bringing together the writers who put their work into the book Organize. It came from a feeling that people doing organizing are constantly reinventing organizing, and we often don't have the time to step back, reflect on our work, and also learn from other people who are involved in other struggles but that are in solidarity with our own. So this book, we reached out to people who are involved in different activist organizing, who have a long-term vision, who see the struggle as something that has to be strategic, that has to be thoughtful, and that has some critical analysis behind it. We asked people to write about their experiences, and to put some emphasis also on the pragmatic aspects of what they do. So the book came out in the middle of the Quebec student strike movement. So it came out at a time when there were a lot of people thinking about organizing, and it's led to a lot of interesting discussions, and we're hoping to be part of that kind of discussion with you tonight as well. And Aziz is going to...
Sure, I mean, one of the things in terms of connecting tonight's report back from the WSF on Palestine and the organised book is that two of the chapters in the book deal explicitly with BDS and with Rafif Ziada, a friend and comrade who used to be here in Toronto, is now in London, wrote an excellent chapter on the role of art in the context of the sort of the struggle, the Palestine struggle for liberation, which is both a reflection on her own role, practice as a Palestinian activist, artist, spoken word artist, and more broadly thinking through the role of art and organising struggles. There's also another chapter by Brian Aboud, which is a reflection, a sort of a meta kind of reflection on BDS organising in Quebec and particularly in Montreal, sort of trying to look at some of the organisational links, alliances, coalitions, possibilities, and think through some of the challenges for doing that kind of work in a city in Canada. So the book really sort of you know, has lots of stuff, I guess, that draws on specific struggles, but also hopefully speaks to some broader tensions and questions and contradictions and challenges that I think many movements face.
My name is Mostafa. I'm one of the authors in the book. I'm not one of the editors, and I'm also active with Labour for Palestine in Montreal, as well as Tadamin, which works on the BDS campaign. But my chapter looks at sort of the role of organizing immigrant workers, and particularly non-unionized workers. What does it mean to sort of reflect and think about class in terms of the 21st century in North America, and what does that mean actually on the ground in terms of sort of rebuilding a labor movement outside of organized sectors of the working class, so talking about agency workers, day laborers, temporary foreign migrant workers, and how all of that organizing takes place, sort of doesn't necessarily immediately connect to Palestine or to BDS, but as Yafa had talked about before, it's no coincidence that the government of the day that is the most sympathetic, the most complicit in terms of Israeli apartheid, in terms of the most active, not even complicit, that's the wrong word of choice, the most active supporter of Israeli apartheid is at the same time the worst friend to working people in terms of stopping unions from organizing, from striking, from changing immigration laws, to restricting the rights of temporary foreign workers and of migrant workers. This is the same government. And so the kind of thinking about the labor movement that we really need, that has been so important, not just for working people here, but also being able to build an effective BDS movement in solidarity with Palestinians, like we've seen when we do have democratic unions such as Canadian Union of Postal Workers, or whether it be CUPE Ontario, that have done active steps to sort of really take back their unions as working people and really to show that solidarity. So that's what my chapter focuses on.
I just wanted to mention also that the proceeds from the book are all going towards the Immigrant Workers Center, which the three of us are involved in Montreal. Thank you.